This is the largest syntropic agroforestry farm in all of Europe, and I finally got to walk every single system in person. We're going to break everything down. There's 10 systems here. We're going to look at what worked, what failed, and what you can learn if you're building in a cold or a dry climate. We'll look at nursery systems, animal integration, mechanized pruning, direct seeding, pest management, and how they're scaling to 100 plus hectares. And so if you want clarity and not chaos, and you don't want to waste years making the wrong decisions, let this be your temperate agroforestry masterclass. Real fast for some context, this farm is in Germany, the project is called Guten Bozel, and the foundation has multiple different businesses within it. They've got timber production, they're doing cattle, they've got arable farming, and the fourth one is supported by the other three. The other three are profitable businesses. The fourth is the agroforestry, which is more of the research and development side of things, doing lots of science and research, and that's what we're going to dive into here. We're going to do some notes on the iPad, and then we're going to dive right into the in-the-field walkthroughs of each of the systems. Diverse fruit tree trials. Now, this was their first area. I think it's about 6 years old at the time that I was here, and you can see, it's quite well established. They have a nice perimeter around. Obviously, they're using the tractor to manage the grass in between and around the systems. We love good access. It's one of the most important things. But in terms of key takeaways from them for this first system, the biggest takeaway was planting the grafted fruit trees. They really suffered because the drought, right? You're not getting a lot of rainfall, poor conditions. It's really sandy soil here, so not a lot of nutrient retention, not a lot of moisture retention. And so the grafted trees just suffered, and it was, in my understanding, it was just a big waste of money. Not a waste because you learned fast, but what they've done is they've decided from this system forward to plant from seed. And so that's the biggest difference between this system and the systems that we see in the future is fewer grafted fruit trees, if any, in the upcoming systems, but this is where they first trialed and tested them out. Now, a few key things here we're going to dive into and see, but I actually want to highlight the management of these systems mostly, because there's a few different species we're looking at in terms of support species. We have Poplar, a few different varieties, the box elder, and they're making these different observations in this early system to inform the management of the following year's systems. This is what the management looked like in that first system. We're actually using the basket on the top of a tractor and a pole pruner, you can see that right there, to do the apical cuts on these trees rather than climbing up a ladder with a chainsaw, harnesses. Much more efficient. Leave it to the Germans to figure out an efficient way to do agroforestry and to mechanize things. That's one of the highlights here is I love how efficient they've made this practice of agroforestry. And so that's what we spent the day doing is managing these older systems, pruning the tops out, the apical pruning, trying to get kind of a level cut. And then as well, somebody would come behind with the pole pruner and also limb them up, basically to make space and sunlight for the fruit trees down below. Airflow, sunlight. Now, this was kind of early to midsummer. It wasn't late summer. And so part of what you'll hear in our discussion about this is the timing of pruning makes a big difference because what you want to do is you want to prune and then activate a really nice, strong regrowth. You don't want to prune and for it to kind of make things suffer and stagnate and struggle. So that's what they're playing with here. Enjoy the video. It's going to be really good. This was probably the most fascinating way I've seen agroforestry, mechanized across all the different systems. And really this site is the testing laboratory. It's the oldest site. Your oldest area will always become your laboratory. So go high diversity. Do the trials, make your mistakes there so that you don't keep making bigger and bigger mistakes as you keep expanding. And one of the interesting observations they were making here, in particular about the poplar, is different poplar varieties will have different responses to management. Some of the hybrid poplars, they don't sucker so aggressively, so it makes it really easy to manage them kind of at the same height, in the same way, without having this mess to deal with. Whereas some of the poplars, they suckered more aggressively, or the box elder, which they also have a lot of in here, or the ash maple, I think they call it, it'll send a bunch of seedlings into the tree lines, and then you're stuck managing these new seedlings underneath your fruit trees, a little bit more hectic. And so when you're looking at scaling systems, this management stuff really matters. But the key takeaway for this particular system is that mechanization is possible. It just takes clever, creative thinking and understanding the dynamics of management. This is one way to mechanize agroforestry. I'm here at Guten Bozel in Germany, one of the biggest syntropic systems in Europe. And so we've got the arm on the tractor with the basket, pruning our emergent trees, something that otherwise might take ladders or pole chainsaws, seeing if this is worth it or not. We're gonna dive in, really cool project. Cool stuff, lots of talk about mechanization here.
Thinking.
So we're just having a discussion now on if now is a good time to be pruning, because for those northern hemisphere folk, it's almost midsummer It's June 11th, so almost the longest day of the year. Water, it's not going to be raining a whole lot here, so very limited water. There's no irrigation. And so we're wondering, is now a good time to prune these poplar, right? To prune these service species. And Ernst said, apparently he does a lot of consulting and help with this project, that now is a great time. By doing this pruning now, Ernst says it'll induce the next set of shoots, which is what you want. What you don't want is to prune and the trees to go stagnant. And they said that they pruned in a previous year, like in late July, like thoroughly in like the middle of hot, dry summer, and they went stagnant. And so what you wouldn't want is that. So that's part of the research that's happening here. The testing is seeing if we prune now, like just before the equinox, I think, longest day of the year, is that going to induce new shoots? That's what we're looking for. So it's research, it's experimenting. This is the first time they've done this specific type of pruning with this box, this crate elevated. But the research here is to see, will this apical pruning do well at this time of year? Important research for you to do as well. When can you get away with pruning? When can you not? Learn the species, learn the seasonality of it. That's the work. And it's a mix of species that are being pruned here. It was poplar, ash maple, poplar, ash maple. They like the poplar more in terms of resprout growth habit. The ash maple is an invasive species. It is seeding wild in the rows. There's some like all in the bottom of the rows here. And in terms of managing the complexity, so it is scalable, they think that poplars are the way to go because they don't resprout as much. They don't send suckers. Certain poplars do, but choosing the ones that don't. The work of this management is, especially in the research stage, figuring out how to do this so it's simple, replicable, but you're still getting the ecosystem and the ecological services for your trees, for the soil, microclimate, pruning ability. This is what it looks like, iterating. These guys do a lot of iterating and learning and implementing new equipment, changing, like modifying equipment. You saw the potato machinery that was modified into a seed sower for their long lines. They do big systems here. So this is what it looks like. So you can see after they come through with the basket and do the apical pruning, then they're coming by it with the pole pruner and just making them more columnar, right? Bringing the branches in towards the trunk, letting a lot more light in. That's the move here. Cool. All right, system number 2. This one's really exciting. Planting with seedy pulp. This is so fascinating. So planting from seed is something that I'm a huge advocate of, and I hadn't seen it done at this scale before. And so I was wondering, how are you guys planting from seed at this scale? Where are you sourcing seeds? What does that process look like? Here's the answer. So this is a really diverse fruit pulp system. That should give you the key indicator there is pulp. They're planting support trees, plugs, nursery stuff for the support trees and some shrubs, but all the fruit trees are planted from seed, and it comes from a local juicing facility. So a bunch of growers in the local area will bring their fruits to this one facility to get juiced, right? You press the juice, what's left is a pulp full of seeds. And so they take the pulp and they literally just plant the seedy pulp into these tree lines. So when you're installing these tree lines, you have this beautiful mix of all these different seedy pulp. And the great thing is that these genetics, they're already locally field tested. They're already in the local ecology. And so what you're doing is you're creating really resilient rootstocks that you can later field graft onto, right? After a couple years, they grow nice. You cut it, and then you graft whatever scion wood you want, whatever particular cultivar you want, and you have an abundance of options, and the seed has grown in situ, like in the site, in the ground, in the line, where it's going to live the rest of its life. And so it makes for a really much more resilient tree to drought, to temperatures, to disease pressure. We saw this with Josh at his farm in Ibiza. The disease pressure was night and day difference between the grafted trees and the seed grown ones right next to each other from the same disease that gets both of them, but it's only really impacting the grafted trees. And so huge way of like mechanizing this, making it more efficient, planting seedy pulp. And it's extremely low cost. You don't have to go buy a bunch of grafted fruit trees. Huge cost saver. And all these systems, I didn't mention this, but all these systems are zero irrigation. They're not irrigating any of this. And so you're creating really resilient systems that don't need to be babied and pampered. They're not going to be susceptible to disease pressure and to droughts. It's inexpensive. The cost here, because there is always a cost, is it's a little bit more technically complicated. You have to learn how to field graft, and you have to make more complex decision making, because you're not just deciding this is where a fruit tree is going to be. If you end up with a funny patch of trees here and there, but you have a gap and, oh, we'd love a plum tree right there, but it's just not, well, that's part of the complexity that you have to manage when you're making these kinds of decisions. But there is a solution, so we'll cover that in the nursery section. I think it's in a few sections from now. This is such a fascinating system. I took a lot of inspiration from this one, and just seeing the performance of these seed-grown trees. All the fruit trees here were planted from seed for free from the pulp after the fruits were juiced. Is incredible. I'm going to say it again. All the fruit trees in this whole system were planted for free from seed in a pulp. Like the pulp was just laid in the tree line with the seeds in the pulp, and the trees germinated, and they're being field grafted now to be productive fruit trees. I'm here with Philip.
Hey.
And Lawrence. We know Lawrence. Here at Guten Bozel in Germany. This system is 5 years old. Very impressive the way that it was done with the sourcing of the fruit trees, the field grafting. I'm super interested. It's a great way of doing things for free, connecting with local resources. Let's talk about it. Philip is like one of the agroforestry guys here who's managing the agroforestry systems here. Lawrence, if you don't know, you didn't see the video, we connected like a year and a half ago at my site. We talked about this project. I was like, I gotta go see it. So now we're here, seeing it, sharing it with you.
Yeah, man. I mean, let's have a look at the fruit trees, I think, right?
Okay, well, so this system is 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So there was planted trees or planted woody perennials. We have poplars and different pioneer species or support species, and in between it's all the sea buckthorn. So every meter there's one plant planted, and then everything else you see in here is all from seed. And yeah, this is a pear.
So the main trees are pear, plum, apple, and you said quince?
We have quince in here because I think it was in the pulp. It wasn't really planned. We're not planning to really produce quince, but we started seeing them sprouting up, so it's kind of fun.
There we go.
And maybe they produce some nice fruit without being grafted. Who knows? We will see.
But I love that idea so much of using like this slurry of pulp with seeds in it and just smearing that into your tree lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect that the seeds survive this process, but actually most of the seeds are completely intact. And the beauty is you need to ferment the seeds anyways, because the seed is adapted to get digested, to germinate, and so this process just combines bringing this fermentation process, starting this fermentation process, and delivering the seeds with some extra fertilizer in the soil, basically.
Yeah, it makes it a really convenient process for where do I source 400 apple seeds with different genetics too, because you said it's not a factory, it's not a processing plant as much as it's a place for the community to come and just juice their fruits. And so it's genetics from locally around here, you were saying.
Exactly. Well, fruit trees are around here, and that's very important. You can't just go to like a big factory and get Pink Lady and all those kind of seeds, because those genetics won't be great rootstock, and you don't have control about it on it. Like, don't have control anyway. When you seed this pulp, you'll get lots of different varieties, lots of different genetics, and then you'll have to see which one perform well, which one graft well, and then hopefully they have traits that also work for your variety that you're grafting onto it. So it's definitely, there will be some trial and error, but you have so many plants to choose from. Like if you just look at this, like this is essentially all fruit trees. So this is all pear that came out of these seeds. Here we have an apple tree, which is still, a wild apple, a non-grafted one, a seedling. And this here is grafted. So this one was actually grafted last summer in August. And now, can you see this? Like right here, that's the chip graft. And so in March, just went after the buds started swelling. So we cut it back here, so all the hormones go into this bud that was planted in here, and it becomes the main leader of the plant. And now we just have to come through here and clean this up a little bit, take all the other branches out, so that Yeah, this one kind of takes over because we don't really want the rootstock to be, growing. We just want to have the grafted variety on there. And yeah, as simple as that, 3 or 4 years, then we come here and start grafting in more humid, warmer climates. Probably it works after 1 or 2 years. Some people in Austria are definitely doing it after like 1 year even. But yeah, for us it takes some time, but then we have the perfect rootstock here, right? Developed on its own root, never transplanted. And let's hope it's gonna be a long-lasting, vigorous tree.
And this isn't the first system that was planted here. This system came after the first area which we visited earlier, you'll see it, where there were some trials and errors, and you realize that, hey, the seed-grown trees are just way healthier, way more vigorous, way more adept at dealing with these relatively tough conditions. By the way, continental Germany, somebody said like 300 to 400 mils of rain per year.
Yeah.
Very sandy soil.
Yeah, exactly. The average was like in the last 20 years, maybe 500 to 600, but in the last 10 or 5 years it was like 3 to 500 like maximum. We had some more rain last year, but basically we had a lot of drought during the last years, and during one of those droughts we found out that basically the seeds were not struggling at all with drought and heat stress, where the big grafted trees from a tree nursery that were sometimes like this high, they were not adapted at all and they were almost dying completely. So yeah, the beauty here is we don't have to irrigate at all. The bigger ones in this in the old system, we had to irrigate in those crazy dry seasons sometimes. But here we have the most resilient tree you can think of, and such a nice genetic diversity. So it's a win-win. You might wait a little bit longer for the tree to bear some fruits, but I always say if you have a healthier tree, you might wait like 3 years longer, but have 20 years more fruit because it's more healthy. That's a good trade-off, I would say.
Very impressive. Zero irrigation, zero buying any grafted trees. Healthier, more resilient, especially in really sandy soil conditions.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a lot of organic matter in the soil.
No.
And the pioneer species that you guys are choosing, Poplar, sea buckthorn, kind of as an early succession crop. What else have we got mixed in with our slurry of fruit seeds?
Well, when it comes to seeds, there's lots of different things that we mainly collected. There's different maples, there's what are all the species? Yeah, there's some ash in here and different sorbus varieties. I don't know what sorbus is in English, but
Elderberry.
That's a different one. Anyway, there's a lot of variety. There's some chestnuts in here too. And you can see it if you walk over here. I think it's very obvious that it's crazy diverse. Here we have another grafted apple tree, pretty high graft. This is a field maple, and then this is a sorbus. And over here we have another prunus, actually, Prunus pardus, which is also native. And yeah, it works really well. You get such a high diversity that the biggest challenge is to figure out which ones to keep and how to manage them, essentially. And also because the fruit seeds are everywhere, like where to graft, what are the right distances and all that. And sometimes you graft 3 in one spot and they all work out, and then you graft 3 over there and you don't get any. So it takes some time, but as you said, it's very low input other than labor, and that kind of makes it attractive, and it's just super vigorous also compared to planted systems, I would say.
Definitely. Also, I think in here we have some interesting wild fruits like cornel cherry. Is it?
Must. It's a dogwood.
Yes.
This is chamomelis, which is Japanese quince. Is that what you call it? Which actually I think it's quite an interesting species as like a more lower kind of layer, because it creeps like this and it produces edible fruit, actually, which are very nice and sour, you don't really get any citrus here, so could be a replacement for that, especially if you're like in a home garden situation. And yeah, I like this a lot. I don't actually know if this is by seed, but I think so.
Yes.
So this is also by seed, and yeah, just so exciting. If you're into if you're into plants and diversity, the system is just amazing.
I mean, if you're into agroforestry at all, you probably have heard of this place, Guten Bozel in Germany. It's the biggest syntropic system. It's probably one of the oldest, I think.
Yes, in temperate zones, I would say.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we know.
That we know of.
Yeah.
It's amazing here. I've spent the day. We're gonna have another day tomorrow. You're gonna see all the systems. It's been phenomenal. Thank you guys for showing me around. This is beautiful. I love that. I had to pull the camera out because that was just so fascinating. That this whole system was planted from this seed slurry of like pulp. Love it.
Yeah.
Field grafting on that. Thank you guys. Fucking awesome. Yes. Just say that real fast.
Yeah, so this is the quince, which we didn't even expect them to come here, and suddenly, you know, there's some beautiful big quince, an apple from seed, another apple, and yeah, there's pears everywhere, plums. It just worked almost too well. Like, oh, well, we have so many options to choose from, which is amazing.
Tough life. And you were just gonna show the grafted plum versus the seedling plum.
Yeah, so this is a local, like a variety that grows here, which is Prunus cerasifera.
This one right here.
And this was grown from seed, and this is in year 5, and what is it, 4 meters tall and already bearing fruit. Pretty amazing.
I mean, there's fruit right up on that trunk.
Yeah, those are edible and quite nice, but we are looking for an actual plum variety, so we use it as a rootstock. So at an earlier stage, when they're maybe like finger thick or a little thicker, and we grabbed them. This was done here 2 years ago. So this is the same, I mean, the same species as a rootstock, and then the graft is right here. Yeah, and this is what grew in 1.5 years, and this will be as vigorous as those other trees. And yeah, doesn't get much better than that.
This is the way. Sludge of fruit tree seeds in pulp from a juicing factory, planted in the lines, field grafting with support species. It's crazy.
This
No, why?
it peels, it cleans itself and makes itself to stay bright, because it's growing in the tundra where there's a lot of cold nights and hot days because of the sun. So if it's dark, the bark, it will get frost cuts. So because one side of the bark will get warmer faster than the other one. So that's why it peels like this, to stay white, to prevent itself from frost cuts.
Hey, real quick, I want to let you know something. I've got some changes coming up. So for the last year, my online mentorship and community, the Food Forest Fellowship, has been primarily based on small group sessions where we do Zoom calls, we jump on with each other, talk about your projects, landowners. But what I've noticed is that A, not everybody has time to make these particular sessions, and B, I can find I'm the most useful and the most helpful to people working one-on-one. And so what I'm doing, starting now, the fellowship now is including one-on-one sessions. So if you join right now, it's just $49 a month. It's like $588 for the year. That includes one-on-one sessions with me. That's where we can make progress. We can look at your land. We'll look at maps, do all the planning. Make sure you skip as many of these avoidable mistakes as you can and just get right to the juice, just to the good stuff. If you're compelled and you want some support one-on-one with me on your land, click the top link below and I'll see you there. But since I'm spending my time doing one-on-ones now, I can only accept so many people in at this price before it does go up again. So if you'd like my help throughout the season of your project, tap the link below. See you inside. Let's get back to this farm. All right, site number 3, the pine monoculture trial blocks. This is super fascinating. It's research. It's basically a 5-year-old system designed for fruit production and resilience in tough, sandy conditions. But the catch here is they're testing these different blocks of pine. So this whole surrounding area is pine monoculture. And what they've done is they've separated 3 distinct blocks. And it's kind of maybe hard to see the other 2. But basically, you have this block right here where they removed 100%, right? 100% removal of all the pine trees. The material was organized and mulched back into the site. I think they took some of the most valuable timber, but everything else was left and incorporated into the new system. And then here, I think it was maybe a 20% removal and then a 40% removal. And the same systems were planted. You can actually zoom in and you can see the planted lines continue into the existing pine canopy. And this is actually really similar to the cabruca agroforestry that we saw in southern Brazil a year ago, where they would have, you know, it's a very common traditional thing where you'd have an emergent rainforest species growing cacao underneath. Very similar here, but the performance of these systems is a huge indicator that it actually just works a lot better to do a full reset, a full cut, incorporate as much of the organic material as you can, because you get everything on the same page, right? Something about plant information, leaving some of the stagnant canopy, and then trying to plant underneath. You'll see in the video, it's night and day difference, the performance between this area and both of these trials. So fascinating site. You're going to get a lot out of this, especially if you have an established forest system that you're considering resetting and using that as a foundation for your food forest. And ever since I first learned about this system when Lorenz came to visit my site here in New Zealand 2 years ago, I've always referenced this. I've always referenced this project where they have the pine and the trials because I've heard about it and I understood the dynamic, but to be here and to see it, it was just fantastic. It was a phenomenal experience. And I really like what he said about this being kind of like a node. Like it's a diversity hotspot. It turns this desert, which is otherwise exactly that, it's a desert of pine monocultures. It takes this piece of it and turns it into an oasis for bird life, for insects, for just a diversity hotspot. And that's not to say that we need to convert all of these pine monocultures into this, because there's a lot of labor, a lot of effort and time and energy that goes into this. But if you create these nodes, this network across a desert landscape, and I say desert because a monoculture of pines is more or less a desert, that can be such a beautiful thing. And so that was one of my big takeaways as well, is these are so possible whether you're here in New Zealand where pine monocultures are a huge thing, not expecting that we convert these massive, huge amounts of land into this, but creating these diversity hotspots that can feed the community, that can feed and house the wildlife and hold a native seed bank. Huge opportunity for it. And so really beautiful to see some of the technical details and thought that went into it. I've spoken a lot about this experiment where they've done a pine plantation into syntropic agroforestry, a few different trials, one where they cut everything down, others where they left like maybe 60 or 80% of the canopy up, just to see the response and how the syntropic system responded to that. We're finally here. I've been talking about this project for years since I learned about it from Lorenz. We're here to see. It's beautiful. The sun is really low. We're going to see some cool stuff. Guarantee.
Yeah, welcome to our forest.
Yeah, so that's the typical pine plantation.
So he's just saying that these pine monocultures are all around here. This is like, especially flying in when I was arriving here, pine monocultures everywhere. So this is what it looks like underneath.
So after the war, a lot of the trees were cut down, or during the war, and then they replanted it all, and it's all pine. So it's a lot of even age pine between 70 and 90 years old, all over the place essentially. And you can see it suffering a lot because the conditions are just not great, and it's not a great ecosystem. The soil, like the litter they drop, it doesn't really decompose. The whole system, the soil, it becomes hydrophobic, and it's not what we're looking for at all.
We're gonna dive in.
Yeah, that's why.
Really interesting. We're going to dive into first looking at the soil conditions, and then we're going to see what's actually happening inside of each of these systems, the results, what's working well, what's not. First, the soil. Obviously, pine monoculture. What are we looking at?
Yeah, the soil is basically the worst you can get here in this area. It's like literally pure sand. We got this soil tested and it had like pH of 3, no available nutrients, but available aluminium, and it was like completely...
It was completely degraded.
Yeah, it was completely degraded and just, devastated by the pine monoculture basically. But also the conditions in the first place were just not very well.
The parent material here is just super weak, right? It's very young, glacial landscapes, and then sometimes you just have spots with rocks and sand, essentially.
Yeah, pure quartz sand basically. And the people told us like you have to put 10 tons of lime here to grow any kind of like herb or like fruit tree or any other tree. So we just did it without liming or anything, and you can see amazing difference between the area where there's a clear cut and
I know it feels naughty using the word clear cut because it has this connotation. It was clear cut. It was fully cleared.
yeah.
The material wasn't taken away though.
Yes,
The
just the best wood was taken away. The best wood was sold, but all the weird pieces and the crowns were left.
So clear cut in that respect. Everything was cut. Whereas in this area that we're standing kind of at the edge of, this was this the 60 or 80% cut?
Well, 60% was retained, 40% was cut, and over there 60% was cut. Exactly, of the original stand.
So 40% was retained here.
Yeah, exactly, and 60
Yeah.
over
And so
there.
this area is doing better than the 60% retention.
Well, actually, between the two different retention schemes, you don't really see any visual obvious differences, I would say.
No.
Right, but you see a very clear one between the clear cut and the retention.
Well,
Right.
and that's super clear just walking in here, being here, looking over there, the drone footage, very clear.
Mhm.
And so what do you attribute that to? Or is it doesn't matter, it just is?
There's a lot of factors. I think.
Yes.
Well, one thing, if you look at this clear cut, it's not on a vast landscape level, right? We just have, what is that? It's a half a hectare, or a bit more than half a hectare of a clear cut. So it's more really a hole in the forest, and you still have these edge effects and the improved microclimate from the forest. And at the same time, comparing it to the retention zone, you don't have these very established trees in, on the soil like this, where there's very little available resources. So this is probably one factor.
Yes, another factor I would say is definitely the impulse that we got from cutting out all of the old trees. So first of all the mycorrhizal connections could be formed completely new, whereas here in the old part they were already quite established, I would say. And at the same time there was a huge impulse of bringing a lot of biodiversity, a lot by seed here into the soil that was kind of also not virgin, but it was not intensively cultivated for the last 80 years. It was basically untouched except of the roads that go here through the forest, and we will see the difference over there, because in my opinion there was still a huge spore bank in the soil and a lot of mycorrhizal fungi that were stimulated to reconnect again after the clear cut, and I think as maybe this part would have behaved similar to this if we would have pruned those trees here, but that's no option. They are way too big. But I think this is a great example of disturbance creates abundance, basically.
I think this is a great example of what's possible even post pine plantation, monoculture. People say, the soil's ruined. Well, let's go take a look. We'll see. Yeah, this is beautiful.
What's special here, I think, is that they used horses to move all the lumber, move everything around. So there was not a lot of compaction created, contrary to our arable kind of fields where we drive with big machines. And then, all the retention of the biomass here is huge. I think one professor, he said that like this initially could have made a huge difference, like a huge impact on the microclimate, just when these small seedlings are kind of protected by these logs. And there might be truth to that as well. And now I think it's gonna serve as kind of a water storage, improving the soil here. And we're starting to see, all this beautiful leaf litter. Before it was just pine needles, and now we're starting to create the proper stuff that we're looking for here in the forest.
So we basically took all the old the branches and logs that were too unvaluable to sell and mulched them on the sides. And all the crown material we shredded and mulched in the middle, so you can still see. And people say, you should not mulch with pine needles or like conifer wood, but this was pure conifer wood and pine needles. and yeah, it's doing well. And as you can see here, the top layer is like already crazy black, and I remember the scientists that took samples here, they thought was a sampling issue because the soil was too black to be true and too
rich in
good,
organic
too
matter.
rich. Yeah.
Yeah, and lots of mycelium, and yeah, it's pretty impressive, to be honest.
Yeah.
One slight disadvantage that can come when you don't retain any trees is like we have late frost issues, and this was actually worse here in the clear cut compared to the retention. But you see it. I mean, it tolerates it, right? So these initial shoots that come out, they maybe die back, and then the plant recovers. There might just be an issue with it having more than one stem. Yeah.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a lot of the Cabruca agroforestry, especially in South Brazil, where they are working with a lot more established forests. Did you visit any Cabruca sites when you were in Brazil?
No.
No. Cabruca is basically working agroforestry within an existing forest. And the problem with a lot of more traditional Cabruca is it's more like this, where you have these stagnant emergent trees that you don't prune, that you don't remove. Whereas the more syntropic Cabruca that we saw at Sitio Nascente do Alvoredo with Nico, Tiago, Renata, and Bernardo, shout out, it looked more like this, which was the more like uncomfy feeling, where I was standing in Brazil at the rainforest with a chainsaw and like cutting trees down to do this. And this is what happens. And you can see the difference when you're leveling a system, reincorporating it back in, even if it's not 100% of the organic material, right? Taking away some of the more valuable timber, putting the rest, organizing it, and planting the diversity. You can see the difference here and there, leaving the more stagnant, emergent, dominant, which is typical of like cacao Cabruca. Typically, they'll clear the rainforest underneath, leave the emergent trees, and then plant the cacao. And so, I don't know how that makes sense in your brain, but basically, a really cool demonstration of what's possible post-pine monoculture in terrible soil conditions with diversity, with thoughtful organizing of the available resources. Super
Yes.
cool. And so everything's organized, super dense lines, like 1.5 meters almost between these lines.
Yeah, the idea here was that there's one focus line, one production line basically, and then the two sides on the two lines on the side are going to serve as biomass lines for the production line. And we have a lot of chestnuts and also even aronia in here. That's an edible fruit. But we were using the chestnut initially because we were inspired by a project close to here, where actually a guy over 100 years ago did almost exactly the same. So he was also transitioning a pine monoculture with chop and drop methods, using a lot of chestnut, and now there's like the most beautiful forest in this area basically. And so we went there and collected a lot of those chestnuts, and we also planted some production varieties in here, but none of them germinated, only the local ones. And we will probably not use it as timber or fruit or nut trees, because they are so great, they're growing so amazingly that we are probably going to use them as biomass trees in the future. And
eventually timber?
Yes.
Yeah, eventually
Yes.
timber. Okay.
Yes. So basically this here was to show like a lot of foresters come and be like, oh, it's too diverse, and what are you going to do with this kind of wood? But all those trees have a certain role, and they are already creating here very nice diverse forest, and we have still a lot of opportunities to decide what is going to be the main focus on this system. Are we actually maybe able to get some fruits out of this forest, even though it would be illegal in Germany, or are we going to get some nice timber, or is it just an amazing example of regenerating landscape after pine monoculture? But yeah, we will see. We have all the options, and I think it cannot go wrong.
Beautifully said.
Actually, I mean, I would like to highlight one potential use for this. So recently we had a big group here of people working in forestry in this area, and for them, it was hard to imagine to establish something like this because of the initial costs, you know, and how to set all this up. It's all fenced because we have very high pressure, like deer pressure, wildlife pressure, that kills a lot of seedlings. But a great use could be to use this as like a future seed bank. So we're looking at thousands of hectares around us that are looking like these pine monocultures, and there's just not enough like native trees, not enough deciduous trees, which can produce seed to even like grow there to like establish deciduous forest in the long run. And if you just create a few of these super diverse plots, you know, within a couple decades, you'll have a huge seed potential that will be distributed by squirrels, by nuthatches, different birds, and I think that could be a great application for those kind of very intense, diverse, small systems. Yeah.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it already, like, it is that. It is a great, diverse application. Like, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, and it doesn't need to be hundreds and hundreds of hectares, but these nodes.
Yeah.
Because that's how forest and distribution systems like that work. It's like, it's a node, it's a pocket, it's a patch, and then it'll spread.
Yeah.
And then that, and then over here, over here.
Yeah, and I mean all the berries here, they're amazing for the wildlife. Like the birds love this place. It's, if you look around, it's a desert basically, because there's just pines and then there's nothing growing even in the understory that could be interesting for insects or birds or any wildlife.
Only an invasive North American kind of cherry, which nobody really likes, but probably also serves a purpose here.
Yes, and here this is booming with life, and it's very, very beautiful. And I think one interesting thing to highlight as well, the people that did the research here from the TU München, they were a very amazing professor, Farha Assad is her name, and she was basically, they were checking the vitality of the trees and the photosynthetic rate, and even the very shade-loving seedlings like from the beech from the red beech, they were actually performing way better here in the clear cut with full sun than with the shade in here, because in my opinion they were just fed by the mycorrhiza and protected, and being just nourished in a better way because of the microbiology. And we will see over there that or another proof for that theory, because in the road where the big forestry machines were going, we were even subsoiling, so we got rid of all the compaction, but no tree survived, not one single tree, because just the whole seed spore bank and all the microbiome that is present in this untouched soil here was lost there by compaction, I don't know, 20 years ago or 60 years ago, and never came back. And we were not able to get rid of, or we got rid of the compaction, but we could not prevent the trees from dying, because they just were facing those brutal conditions: sandy soil, high acidity, and high aluminium. Yeah.
This is crazy. I really like this project. I think it has a lot of really cool insights to take away, and I especially like what you said, Philip, about how these don't need to be massive, huge, like hundreds and thousands of hectares, but
Yeah.
nodes within deserts. I like what you said about that too, Lawrence. Like, it's monoculture is a desert. We see a lot of this in New Zealand with pine monoculture. Very similar, trickier terrain, albeit, but like this is an opportunity for preserving a lot of those native genetics, a lot of just general biodiversity and the health that brings in a relatively compact, bite-sized piece of land. How big is this section? How many is this?
0.6 hectares, I think.
Yes.
0.6 hectares. Super manageable.
And the whole plot is 1 hectare.
Yeah. So, I think I wasn't here, but like setting it up was a big task. But since then, fairly little labor. Like we actually will probably stop pruning the cutting the grass as well. Here's a bit more, you know, because this is where the big machines were driving before, so grass is a bit more prominent. But in the other sections, we're not going to do much until we start potentially pruning the trees, the support species. But yeah,
I love how those poplar just like make their wave and sound in the wind.
they actually, you know what they're called in Latin? It's Populus tremula. It means like the weeping, well, not weeping. What is that called? This one, the shaking willow. The same, like that's the German name.
Love
shaking willow.
Love it.
Poplar or willow?
Poplar, the shaking
Yeah.
poplar. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I was here setting it up, and I have to mention that there was like literally the genius that designed the system, Renke de Vries, and he was also managing and designing all the other systems, and he was pushing this system forward, and already after implementing, he said, okay, I would never do this mulching with the logs again, because this was almost the highest labor requirement, because we had to arrange all of them by hand and cut them in pieces. So I think, or he said, in the next situation like this, he would shred all the trees and put everywhere wood chips and plant in that. So to save labor, just shredding like the whole trees that are here with a big shredder, and then like distributing it. Yeah.
So for the next system, we're gonna get a horse, and we're gonna mount our little seeding implement onto the horse, and then we,
Yes. And get the huge shredder mounted behind the horse.
horsepower.
Once I get my horse, we'll get there. But I can probably attest to that, because I've done a similar install where it was we have a bunch of existing organic matter, a bunch of trees. We spent the time, we cut them. We even used a wood splitter to split them so they're facing down on the open side. That was the most labor. We're never doing that again. I think that I like that idea of just chip everything you possibly can, because the labor of this, I can imagine, would have been tremendous.
It was insane. It was a lot of fun, especially to cut down all the trees. But then at some point it was just unbearable, or too crazy. I think it took us 2 or 3 months with 10 people, 8 hours a day. But
All billable hours.
yeah.
Okay, well, this is fascinating. I really am glad that we came here, because you've been telling me about this particular example and project since we met a year and a half
Yes.
ago. I've been passing it on to the people in the fellowship, which, by the way, you should be in the fellowship if you're not already. What are you doing? At least in the family. It's free. To be here in person and to see it, and to see the examples, and to see and hear your thoughts moving forward, it's a privilege. Yeah. Really special to be here. This is something that I didn't catch quite earlier. This had heavy machinery on it as an access, super compacted, and you can see nothing really worked very well. Like, the grass is doing great, but other than that, same species assortment, just like all of it more or less failed here. Earlier in succession, some things doing better. Looks a little bit more like these systems back here. Super stunty.
Even though we subsoiled and like shallow plowed the soil. Like makes no sense except of that there's the microbial community missing, in my opinion. Yeah.
That's something we should definitely test
Yeah,
properly.
yeah, that would be amazing.
There's
I
some
don't
really
know.
interesting theories that you can.
In the pine forest. It's crazy. All right, site number 4. This is actually the air prune beds, the nursery where a lot of this action is happening. So this is Jojo. He's the nurseryman here at Guten Bozel, and he's phenomenal. Loved hanging out with him. And these are his air prune beds, which was super validating because they've been using these for a long time. I've been using these for a long time, and I've been shouting from the rooftop, you got to use air prune beds, you got to use air prune beds. And so when I see the biggest farm in Germany using air prune beds, I feel quite validated. And if you have air prune beds, you should too. So if you don't already, grow some air prune beds. Grow the air prune beds, build the air prune beds, and grow whatever you can in there. These guys are doing chestnuts because that's one of the key crops that they've got access to and grow really well in the area. Just their setup is really nice. I actually modified my setup when I got back home after being here because previously my air prune beds were on the ground level. Right? They had a gap, but it was still coming up at knee height, and so weeding and planting and just everything is easier when I raise them up. And so now my air prune beds are at hip height. It's phenomenal. But I love this cage system, and they have to do this because they have rodent pressure. I have a lot less of that, and so I don't have to do as much of the cage building on top. It's convenient, but you might have to. But air prune beds are a phenomenal way, and the way that they tie into your agroforestry system. I was thinking about this for a while because I'm a huge advocate of planting directly from seed and just directly planting it into the system, but I'm also a huge advocate of having air prune beds, and I was trying to work out the balance between how they interlink, how they match. Here's what I've kind of landed on because I've been applying it in this way exactly at my site. When you plant directly from seed, you will have gaps in your system. You will have spots and things are maybe planted a little too close here and a little far apart there, and maybe it's not perfect, but you get what you get. When you plant from seed, that's why you want to plant abundantly. You know, there's a saying that if you want to have one tree, you have to plant 1,000 seeds or 100 seeds. So if you want 100 trees, plant 1,000, factor of 100. So what you're doing is you're mitigating your risk. By having an air prune bed, you're mitigating your risk to having gaps or spots where, oh, we would love a chestnut right here. There's enough plums, there's enough apples, but we would love a chestnut. And if it doesn't come up, you have the spares in your air prune bed. So for certain crops, for certain target things, it's worth having an air prune bed so that in year 2 or 3 of your system, you can identify where the gaps are, because it's also inconsistent maybe for the field grafting approach, right? When you're planting grafted trees, you have a very clear idea. Every 4 meters, we're going to have this medium strata tree. Every 8 meters, we'll have this high strata tree. Every 12 meters, we'll have this. Very straightforward. And if you have the funding for it and the money and the conditions and the compost and the way to make it work and the irrigation, awesome. But if you don't have that, or if you're trying to create a really robust, resilient system with seeds, this might be your best bet at filling some of those gaps that inevitably will come. Those missing strata layers, for example, because maybe you just have a bunch of plums and apples, but you're missing an emergent and you just don't have one because now the seeds came up or you didn't have seed at the time. Having your air prune bed is insurance for that. And so he's growing his chestnuts. They're doing really well. Love to see it. Great work, Jojo. Love a good air prune. You should be making these as soon as you finish this video. You can even pause the video after this. Wait on the next sections. Go build an air prune bed. I have a video for it on my channel. You can find it and just walk through the steps. Build your air prune bed. Plant your seeds, nuts, fruit trees. Just do it. To be honest, it's just one of the highest leverage things you can do. As somebody who's doing food forestry, it's a small space. It doesn't take up a lot of area. Very little weeding, right? You weed it maybe like once or twice, and by the time the canopy closes, it's just a forest, a carpeted forest of these trees. You don't have to do a bunch of weeding. And it's such a big soil mass, you don't have to keep watering it because it holds on to a lot of soil. And the inverse is true for all your pots. If you have fruit trees in pots, it dehydrates faster. There's a lot more sunlight on the actual potting mix, so you have to weed that. It's a pain in the ass. Pots suck. Make some air prune beds. It's just a really ideal way of scaling things up at a very low cost and low effort. This is incredible. Here with Johannes, and he's got a bunch of different air prune beds. They're big. This is really cool to see. You've been using these for a few years.
Yes.
Learned from Akiva Silver.
Same, yes.
And you're doing what species in here?
Well, chestnut. So here Castanea sativa, Castanea crenata crossing by seed works perfectly. I went a little bit thicker. How do you say? I have a
Yeah, they're deeper.
deeper.
These are like almost half meter. They're like up to knee height. Obviously, there's the
Exactly.
gap below with the
Yeah.
ground, but these are deeper than I'm used to making. So
Yes.
super cool.
We don't need to explain air pruners again, don't we? We don't need, right?
They know what they are.
All right, nice. So yeah, I went deeper because I want to have the option to leave them 2 years, and then the substrate is sucking down, or how would you say? I'm not a native speaker.
The soil level when you make air prune beds, it drops over
Yes.
the course of 12 months, 24 months, and so having them deeper just gives you more soil to work with.
Yeah, you need to consider that. So I use compost here from my friend Lawrence, make a substrate out of it, put some perlite inside to make it drainage and more fluffy, and then basically also mulch it on top, depends on what you use. And then, yeah, let's go over there and see this chestnut. Here I have khaki, frost tolerant khaki. Maybe you have that at your place as well from Virginia.
Frost tolerant persimmon, nice.
Yeah, I'm also experimenting. I'm getting seeds from Lebanon. I have connections to Lebanon, like Quercus libani, frost-tolerant oak from the mountains. So it's dry over there. Gets very cold, and the same with khaki, the same with pomegranate. Yeah, and then I try them out here with fig as well and other fruit trees. Basically, yeah, when I'm traveling, I take seeds and I try to exchange from climate that makes sense for here.
It's a big part of the work for agroforesters. Exchange
Yes.
seeds, go travel, go find analog climates and swap seeds around.
Like back in the day, yeah, that was the most valuable thing you can bring somewhere. Seed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the chestnut. I have to do some weeding, but it's coming very well. It has nice microclimate over here. I put them very dense, so they will prune themselves and go up. What else is there to say? I mulched it, and yeah, then we have nice roots. So after they're through the first phase, I will open it up, do the weeding, and then later this year when we are ready to plant, I just open it from the side, take them out, bring them to their spot, plant them, and as I said, also create a microclimate, give them a pioneer tree, first succession, second succession, so sunflower or hemp or cedar or and then pioneer tree, and underneath some yeah, to close the ground, to cover the ground.
This is great.
Yes,
Air prune beds at Guten Bozel.
exactly. You can put whatever you want to plant in terms of trees over there. Wild fruit trees, like local, collect your local seeds, wild plum, wild apple, wild pear, produce your seedlings, put them to the field, let them adapt, graft them. There you go. Bless.
That's the recipe. Make air prune beds for
Yeah,
your big
man.
big project. Air prune beds. See what I mean, guys? I talk a lot about air prune beds. That's why
It's beautiful.
That's why they know they should be
I'm
making
excited
air prune
about
beds.
it. And in a small place, man, I can produce more trees in this area than I did before with my concept that I had here, and much less work, same quality. So
See, he's saying it, not me. Right? Air prune beds. Make them less work, better quality. Come on.
yes, sir.
Hey, quick reminder, if you're not already in the Food Forest Fellowship, the paid community where we're doing one-on-one work together now, if you just want to connect with other people in your area who are doing this work, join the Food Forest family. It's a free community. I don't spend any time in there, but there is an interactive map and a community board where you can connect with other people doing this work in your area. We've got 3,000 plus people in there now. It's a great way to get started and just pick other people's brains if you don't have that community right around you. So go check it out, Food Forest family. But if you want my help one-on-one, join the fellowship. That's where the party happens, and you get to come to trainings at my site in person. But either way, if you're not part of the fellowship, you should definitely be in the family. Sometimes I post exclusive stuff in there too. So check it out, Food Forest family. It's down there. All right, number 5. This was the habitat corridor, low maintenance fruit production. You can actually see. So the cool thing here, they're connecting these two patches of forest, creating this habitat corridor to allow wildlife to pass through. It creates this really just productive but also ecologically valuable part of the landscape. But as a result of the ecological connectivity, which is what we'll call that here, right, connecting these two pieces of ecology so they can mix, there's a lot of mice and rodent pressure. And so what they're doing is they're using birds of prey, right? They're making habitat predator poles so the birds of prey can sit up there, watch the fields, pick the mice up. So they're creating more balanced ecology. It's more about like a balanced or a peace agriculture versus a war agriculture, right? War agriculture is bombing it with sprays, poisons, pesticides, fungicides, whereas inviting the ecology to balance things out, that's what they're creating here. And so you can see all these lines are following the contour. It's done with a GPS tracker in the tractor, and so it's super easy to manage. They're still mowing the grass in between, using the grass on the edges to mulch the tree lines, and again, planted with the pulp, the fruit tree seeds, a great herbaceous layer in these lines, pears, apples, sea buckthorn, the classic mix for this farm. Late succession stuff, oaks, maples. You got black locust, poplar, willow, birch for the earlier succession species. And I think the point that I like the most about this system is that it's kind of intended to be lower maintenance. We all want to find that trifecta of what's really productive, what's ecologically awesome, and low maintenance. And so if you're paying attention to the strategies they're using here, these patterns that are applying at all these different sites, you'll start to tease apart what things make that work. How do you balance productivity, efficiency, ease of management, ecological benefit? That's kind of the point. And so in this system, we talk a little bit about the economics and some of the scientific research that they're doing. Enjoy.
There's probably another one in here.
Super interesting agroforestry system that is a habitat corridor and fruit production with a lot of mice pressure. So you can see from the drone footage, it's connecting these two forest patches. It's a big system. How big is this area?
It's like 5 hectares.
5 hectares planted on keyline. And you can see a lot of these that we're standing at right here. Best method for reducing mice pressure. You can see we've got a pile of mice remains here.
Yes, it actually is, in our opinion, the best solution against mice pressure without using toxins, because the birds of prey, they will rest here and have a good surveillance. So we kind of tried as well to like place the ones or the poles so they can sit always in the wind direction, because they don't like that if the wind comes from the side. And they're basically like surveillance cameras here on the field, because they just sit there and wait and look down, and if they find a mice, they will just come down and eat it. And all the leftovers that they can't digest, like the bones and the hairs, they will puke out basically and bring the nutrients right back into the tree line. And also on the other side of the pole, there's the poop station, the toilet, bird toilet.
And so this area, you can see from the drone footage, is planted on keyline. And you were saying that it's gathered from satellite or it's satellite for the contouring.
Yes.
Onto a USB stick into the tractor, and it just makes all the spaces between all the lines perfect. And so it's easy to manage with the tractor.
Exactly. This is very important for low maintenance pain, and we have a lot of great minds in the office that are able to do this. So we know exactly the key lines and exactly the spacings, or the computer house and tractor house in the end. Then we applied manure or compost over here in the tree lines with the GPS, and then we subsoiled and tilled the surface a little bit, and then we applied the wood chips also with GPS, and then we planted by hand without GPS. Yes, exactly.
So you put the pulp mix in.
Yes, we
so
also
the fruit
seeded.
pulp with the seeds. You seeded everything and then planted all of the grafted
trees from our tree nursery that are performing very well here, because they have this massive, beautiful root ball because of this the pouches. And also we planted the sea buckthorn and the pioneer trees, but everything else was seeded as well. In this case, we also planted the herbaceous layer because we wanted to increase the density so much that we don't have to weed grasses out of the middle, and it worked very well. We basically had no weeding to do here, and now we have this wonderful dense mix. But like you said, we have a very high mice pressure here because it's connecting to forest patches, and that was also initially the idea, to basically create a corridor between those ecosystems. And apparently the mice are using the corridor very much. And thank God we also have foxes coming in through the fence. We just found a mice nest dug up. Yeah, the main focus here is on pear and apple, but also the Thibaxon is our main crop in the low succession. And yeah, we also have the choice to at some point yeah, take away the fences, and that's, I think, in general the goal for the future, to be able to take out the fences, have a big resilient system, and let nature pass as well, and create a wonderful habitat here, plus production.
Super cool. And there was also that you didn't mention the chestnuts that are coming
Yes.
up as well.
Yes.
What are some of those pioneer trees I'm seeing? The
Like locust.
black locust, willow, poplar,
Yes.
three mains.
Those are our main pioneer biomass trees. Also some birch, and then for the later succession phases we have maple, different kinds of maple, and also oaks. As we like especially the red oaks, because they are more drought tolerant, even though they're also on a red list in terms of agroforestry funding. It's ridiculous if you want to apply for subsidies for agroforestry, you have to comply with a list with a lot of rules, and this diversity doesn't fit in, also this concept not, so we cannot apply for this funding, but it's okay. It's not a lot at all. It's more meant for like alley cropping systems for energy production with just pure poplar, like the system we have as well there. So we just did it like this. So yeah, red oak is our main focus in terms of oaks, but also we put the local oaks in here, and this will be the biomass trees in the future.
And one thing that you were just mentioning, Lawrence, is that, you know, a lot of people who get into this work get enthusiastic. They want to plant more systems, and they fall into this kind of trap of planting more than they can or decide to have capacity to manage. How is that playing out here? Because I think you just said that this is one of the areas that maybe will start to get a little bit more abandoned as time goes on.
Yes, I mean, abandoned is probably the wrong word. It's more like a little less managed, because here we have it's first of all, it's a bit further away from the farm, and we have basically reached some kind of maximum for those very, very intensive care systems to manage. So we are kind of, the next systems we will plant, we'll still keep on planting, but we don't plant as intense. We will still use a lot of syntropic principles with direct seeding, high diversity, but not as much pruning. And we will see how it goes. But I think, yeah, we will make our experiences with it. But here, because we will put a lot of focus on the fruit trees, we will like raise them and form them in the right way, and also for sure then harvest the sea buckthorn. But we might not come here like super frequently to prune the herbaceous layer, maybe just 2 times a year, something like that, and not not more often. And for sure at some point we have to also manage the canopy to produce fruit, but yeah, we're probably going to and we're still mowing the interlines to get the mulch for the lines.
And that's all done with the hay rake that just pushes all the mulch over onto the edge. Super easy.
Yes, exactly. It's now done by tractor mowing and thwarting just after each other, very very quick and very efficient with a small tractor, and not the one we were seeing. We have a smaller tractor that we use usually for this, and yeah, this will be interesting in the future.
Cool system. Lots of different systems here.
Yes.
Yeah. It's impressive the amount of agroforestry that's here.
Yeah.
The biggest agroforestry farm that I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's lots to learn, lots to research. That's I think the beauty, that we have so many different systems with different concepts and focuses, and at the same time we have this foundation that is basically accompanying the whole process with scientific research and collecting a lot of data, working together with institutions and also universities to do a lot of research on those systems, to show the first of all the ecological output that we can achieve by planting such diverse systems, but as well the economic output in the keyline system that we have over there. We were calculating with a very well-known institute in Germany for finances in agriculture how much we put in terms of like application costs, or like we wrote down every hour, every single seed that got into the system, and we calculated that basically if we would it's 3 hectares there, if we would have just kept it in agricultural production growing grains, we would maybe get a revenue of like 2,000 euros after like a year. But if you put a diverse fruit system and berry system like we did in there, we have basically transitioning time where we have to put in more labor, but after like 10 years we could potentially get like 70 to 100,000 euros from this plot a year. So it will pay off, but it takes some time to get there, and so we're very fortunate to have those many operations here on the farm that can help out each other like the cropping is generating the most income at the moment, but at some point it might be other way around, and still the aim is for each company, each system to be self-sustainable, because sustainability will only work if it's also self-sustaining in a way, and that's the beauty, that we can already like calculate, but hopefully in a few years show this will also pay off if you take the investment, put in the work, and have ecological output that is uncomparable to other production systems, and nice, decent economic output that makes it sustainable.
Like Felipe said from Amadeco, when ecology meets economy, we smile.
Definitely.
Very cool systems here. No doubt we'll keep seeing more. We might meet Benedict later. Cool stuff.
Yes.
It is very impressive.
I think mountain pear has nothing to do with the pear, but it's a wild fruit. Actually, super delicious.
Super delicious. Wow. That's like, what does that taste like?
I don't know.
It's like a mix of all different kinds of berries in one.
And I never knew about this fruit growing up in Berlin. Only when I moved here, because we will not find it in the supermarket, because it's not
It's like very blueberry.
it's not mechanically harvestable a lot, because the fruits ripen off at different stages. They're not ripen off uniformly, but the birds love it, we love it, and at some point we were thinking to maybe create like a bar, like a fruit nut grain bar with all the fruits from agroforestry, and there's a lot of space for those wild fruits dried in there.
It's a good idea.
Call it night camp. Translated.
System number 6 is actually really close to the nursery area, but it's actually this block right here that is just out of screen. You can't see it, but it's a Christmas tree agroforestry system. Really fascinating and interesting, because you don't ordinarily see pine trees being used in agroforestry systems. Even in the Mediterranean, where stone pine, the pine nuts, are a common part of the landscape, I still didn't see any agroforestry systems utilizing pine trees as part of their succession. So super interesting, and I really appreciated seeing them here for a different purpose. These aren't pine nuts, but they're Christmas trees where they're pollarding them. They're cutting them at head height, harvesting the top for a Christmas tree, and then it'll reshoot and you can do it again. So really interesting system. They also had blackberries, a bunch of native stuff, some nuts coming up. They had potatoes, I think. And so just a really interesting dynamic, but especially with these very aesthetically important crops. Bananas are very similar. They have to have the right size, the right curve. Well, people are really picky about their Christmas trees as well. You got to have the right spot to put the little star on top. And so there's challenges that come with that. But again, this is creating an idea of how do we move away from the really toxic, just poor Christmas tree farm practices that we see into something that's more regenerative, a little bit more ecologically oriented, with a longer lifespan, because you have more productive, longer succession trees here. So very fascinating, the Christmas tree agroforestry system. If you live in an area like this, you could probably think of some really good ideas for your site to do something similar. Christmas tree agroforestry. Super interesting, making perennial Christmas tree production here with Lorenz at Guten Bozel. Look at this, we've got Christmas trees planted. There were previously blackberries and potatoes, but the Christmas tree stuff is, look at this detail, it's super interesting.
Yes, so we cut the top of this old overgrown tree 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and basically it put out another shoot like this. We just removed all the other competing shoots, and now we have a new tree as a top again that we can harvest basically this winter. And after we harvested this tree, we have the next one just growing here, and the beauty is because it's already an established tree with a big root ball or big root zone, it actually grows way faster than if we would replant the whole tree.
He was just saying that the Christmas tree production, it's fucked, right? Because what, every year, annual cycle, few years, and then they just remove it.
Lots of pesticides, lots of fertilizers, and here we let the mulch and the diversity do the fertilization. And yeah, it's basically an old method to have those old remaining trees and just harvest the tops. It's I think in Japan they use this for building wood, and yeah, it works perfectly for Christmas trees as well. The only problem you can have sometimes is that they take the next bigger branch and use it as the new top, and then to have a really beautiful even Christmas tree, the whole thing moves up too much basically. So you have to harvest, or you have to wait longer and harvest in a higher position. Also, you cannot really, like, I don't know, manage this part of the tree a lot because it's so high. But in the most cases we don't need to. That's just a little detail in the management. But I think in the long run we can actually make more of the blackberries in this system that really benefit from the acidic soil that those trees produce or contribute to. And we have used them as a trellis holder, trellis support, and basically they work very well together.
The pines are a trellis support for...
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is blue spruce. We also have some other kinds of Christmas trees that we have in the same system. But here we also have in nice spacing some chestnuts as a overstory, because actually they grow even better with a little bit of shade, and the chestnuts also really love the acidic soil. So win-win-win.
We love it. Win-win-win. Christmas tree farm, agroforestry. How you do it? Very cool.
All kinds of wild trees, poplars, many things. Berries. Those are also very nice varieties with huge berries. Here's a chestnut. It suffered from some late frost, but still going strong.
All right, system number 7. This is actually a really quick one, but it's these poplar windbreaks in between their arable farming. So they're doing alley crops of arable farming. I think they're doing corn this year. And they've got these really widely spaced poplar windbreaks. Super simple, some of the earliest systems that they installed, not syntropic by any means, but still ecologically functional. Now what they did find was that they're helping with the mechanical stuff, right? They're reducing wind, they're increasing the overall microclimate of the space, which does help the crops. That being said, you aren't getting the same benefits as when you have a huge diversity, like when you have, these crazy fruit systems, because you don't have that same biological diversity in the ground. Because what you're seeing, what they're finding actually is when you have a really high diversity in your tree lines, that biology, its impact moves further, right? Its biological impact in the soil biology, the life is higher further away from the tree line. Whereas when you're just planting poplar, yes, you're getting the mechanical benefits, shade, microclimate, but fewer benefits in terms of the soil biology, which, as we know, is what's key to unlocking nutrients, availability, all that jazz. Beautiful to see, just a really simple, low maintenance agroforestry system. And it is agroforestry, because agroforestry doesn't necessarily mean super dense, crazy, diverse. This is agroforestry. With a windbreak, it is agroforestry. It's multi-strata. You have these different functions happening, different ecological layers. It's not always about how complex can I make things. There's beauty in elegant solutions. I think every farm should have one of these lookout towers.
Yes.
Poplar agroforestry.
Yeah, this is our 34 hectare alley cropping system basically. So it's just for wind, erosion and microclimate purposes. But at some point we will also use the wood for sure. But right now it's benefit, or the crops definitely benefit from the microclimate and the wind slow down.
This is the cattle fodder system. It is 6 hectares and it's beautiful. You can actually see they've got, I think it was 9 meters in between their tree lines. But one of the most interesting things here that they ended up actually having a challenge with was that you can actually see every 6th line. So there's one here, there's one here, is actually a line of sea buckthorn, which again is one of their target crops here. They're in all the systems, they're really productive, they like these conditions. But incorporating them into the cattle system actually brought a few more challenges than it did maybe benefits, because what they're then having to do is manage the cattle around these kind of target crop lines, whereas it might have been easier to just say this is strictly for fodder systems, which again, super diverse. You'll see in the clip there's a bunch of different species here, multifunctional, but just trying to stack multiple key functions into the same system, sometimes it's easier to just tease them apart and say this is a system focused on this. But really beautiful example of what a fodder system can look like. There's some interesting dynamics about the animals managing the trees versus the humans managing the trees. How do you find that balance? But the point of this system is so that the cows can self-medicate, right? They can get their own nutrients that are different than what they're just getting from grass or from feed. They're creating healthier animals, creating a healthier ecology, and you're creating a more resilient system so that when there's less grass, there's trees. Plus, they like shade. I think I've understood that they'll actually produce more milk and put on more weight when there is light shade, because it's stressful to be in the hot sun. Grass actually grows better when it has some shade. And so it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. But having some shade, having some trees in your land, on your system, as part of your pasture, it's probably a good idea. And I know that while 6 hectares isn't a huge amount of area, it's still really interesting to see what's working about this, because obviously some parts, still research, still developing best practices, but how that would look if it was applied over a whole cattle farm. What would that look like? Super interesting to think about, especially for us here in New Zealand. Dairy is a huge industry. I'd really like to kind of take this and see how it can apply. I've got so many neighbors here who just have endless deserts of grass. What would that look like? Happier cows, happier ecosystem, maybe extra products. Very exciting things. 1, I got the Guten Bozel hat from Lauren's. 2, we're in the oldest system at Guten Bozel, the second oldest system they ever planted. Second oldest system here at Guten Bozel. It's a silvopasture system for cows. Fodder systems, but also every, I think 5 or 6 tree lines, there's a line of sea buckthorn, which is a crop here, as well as walnuts for production and maybe timber. Super fascinating. 6 hectares here. 6 hectare site, 9 kilometers of tree lines at 4.5 meter spacing. Super high diversity of the fodder lines. What's in those fodder lines? What's happening within the fodder system?
So it's super diverse, as you said. I think there's more than 10 different fodder species planted and an equal amount seeded, like more late successional kind of trees. And the idea is that it's, as you can see here, it's all shrubbery, which we are probably going to prune to up about 2 meters so that it's, gets more dense at a height that is reachable for the cows. And yeah, there's anything, like there's willow in here, there's elderberry, different roses, hawthorn as well, which actually is very interesting because these thorny shrubs, they usually said that they're not, like cows don't eat them, but when they're very young, when they're just leafing out, they're actually super tasty for them, and that the defense mechanism isn't really mature yet, so they do eat them. And yeah, as you said, every 6th line we have a potentially productive line with sea buckthorn and walnuts. In the long run, the idea is that the walnuts will have a canopy together with some high value timber tree, and they are in the middle, like in the middle lines between those sea buckthorn lines, we have integrated some potential high-value timber trees, which we'll also try and use to have a moderate canopy here, kind of savanna system, and in underneath you still have enough light for these shrubbery and also grass, because you know cows, they sustain themselves mainly off grass. Yeah.
I got a question. What are some of the other ecosystem services, but also benefits to the cows directly, that make this worthwhile instead of just having pasture?
For us, it's like a little safety net, because we do have very like dry conditions sometimes. Like right now, it's actually a bit of a drought, and you see there's lots of foliage on these shrubs. So there's always some kind of feed here for them, even if the grassland is not very productive anymore, and if the conditions are super extreme, they find some shade and shelter here, which out in the open, where we haven't integrated trees yet, it might be just more harsh for them, especially when you get up to 35-40 degrees, which we're getting here in summer. So yeah, that's good. What's interesting is that the system was designed and also implemented 5 years ago when we had, I think, 40 cows or 20 cows. We were just starting out and we didn't know how many there would be like a few years down the line, down the road. Now we have 300 cows, and 6 hectares is just not very big or big enough for them, and this tree line spacing would mean like if we would have the whole herd in here, they'd create a lot of damage. So we just had 2.5 cows, two cows and their calf in here, 2 jerseys, and they did amazingly. So we could really observe which kind of species they actually like eating, and which ones they maybe just destroy, or you know how they interact with the trees and shrubs in general.
And I think very interesting is that basically the system was designed by Ranke again, and he was researching a lot about fodder trees, and basically this is a very old tradition in Europe. Like they were even like doing hay, like tree hay. They were like drying the leaves for the winter and then feeding it in the winter. And there's certain trees that have a very valuable fodder, very amazing fodder value. For example, mulberry has a lot of protein and minerals, but also the willow has a lot of medicinal substances. So basically, we planted the pharmacy for the cows here as well, the Weißdorn? Hawthorn. Is super medicinal for heart issues, or in general for very beneficial for the heart. So if they have pain, they will go snack on the willow,
because it's like aspirin, right? Has the
yes.
same compounds as aspirin.
If they feel like they want to have something for their heart, they go to the hawthorn, and they are so smart. They can literally smell which herb is good for them, or which tree fodder is giving them what they need at this moment.
Yeah, they can self-medicate instead of just having grass.
So that's how Ranke was designing the system, also with the pea shrub,
Siberian pea.
yeah. This one here, it has a lot of it's basically a legume tree, and it has a lot of protein.
Mm-hmm.
So also the idea was if we might as well keep chickens in here after the cows. So there's also berries in here, for example. So there would be a very multi-purpose system here. Or this is a very multi-purpose system, and but now that the cows were in here, it was very fascinating to see what they actually, or what literature said would be good and what was actually interesting for them. Because in the beginning, I remember when we brought them here, they were going crazy about the grass, but they were not interested in the trees at all. And you were observing the process, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So actually the pea shrub here, the protein-rich pea shrub, they didn't like it all. Like they didn't eat it, but they destroyed it a lot. And I think it's because, you know, it has a little, you can scratch yourself quite nicely on these branches. They have little tiny thorns or whatever. So maybe that's why they use them like this. The willow, at first they weren't super excited about it, but then later on, as the grass was also getting like more sparse, it was getting warmer, we just pruned it down, and they came right to us and were eating it out of our hands because they loved this so much. But my favorite is hawthorn. So here you can actually see that the cows can be gentle, and they can do a perfect kind of apical pruning, or a perfect pruning for you. You see here, like this is all pruned by cows. So as I said before, like these thorns, or they won't eat it. You know, these mature branches here, these are very thorny, so they're not going to eat it. But the young branches here, they don't have thorns yet. And what I observed, because they were crazy about it, I observed that there was aphids. There's some here. There's aphids living on this, and they produce honeydew, right? So I think it was like cow candy. If you lick the branch, it was actually sweet. So the cows all crazy about it. I used to like bend down those branches, and they were eating it. And it's really cool to see. Another species I didn't really like hazel, they weren't crazy about this. And here we've got a sorbus variety, which is our timber tree. And they didn't eat it at first, but then they started exploring more, like tasting more different things, and then they actually ate a lot of those leaves. And it was a bit critical when it was quite low, because then they would top it, which we don't want. But otherwise they did quite nice lateral pruning for us. So with this, with just 3 cows, it was pretty possible to keep them in here. I think if you have too many cows, the pressure will become too great on those woody perennials, and they will destroy a lot. But yeah, if you can play around with it, it's a really interesting system to have.
I got a question. What's the value in like the trade-off between work in like putting temporary fencing along the edge to protect some of these high value species, or to just allow kind of the edge to be pruned, versus like these systems? Actually, I do see there's wire going across each of the lines. Is that all of the lines have wire? Okay, so what's like in your guys' mind the trade-off of not doing that work versus just like letting them freely have full access to all these lines?
It's what we kind of implemented in the new system that we saw. The idea is just to split up some functions, because excluding the cows from those like high value timber trees would mean you either have to fence the whole row, but then they can't really get access and the benefits from the other shrubs, or you do individual tree like protection, which is very expensive to set up. So like we always fenced sea buckthorn row to sea buckthorn row, so they were excluded, the productive lines, and they could use everything in between. And then potentially one could, well, with these high value timber trees it's a bit difficult, you know. Either you do it like we do, and we just, you know, in year 5 we put them in here, and we accept that some of them get lost, but we have some redundancies, we have some extra ones, so we still have enough after they grazed. Or you put in this extra effort of fencing them. But I think it is a lot of work, especially if you're moving them a lot. Like we try to only graze them here for a couple of days, move them to the next little section, and that's already a lot of labor.
But I think the cows are made to eat trees. I don't think, I believe it, because the original cow is actually coming from the woods, so they were naturally grazing in a savanna kind of ecosystem, eating bark, eating leaves, eating grasses, but not like entirely grass. And what we have in every scenario in like animal keeping, even if you have a very nice pasture, you have to give them extra minerals, because they won't get everything from the grasses or herbs that grow on the pasture. So and trees have a completely different mineral content in their leaves than grasses, so there will be a nice substitution from the fodder, from tree fodder. I don't know if it's actually enough to balance out their minerals to have them very, very healthy, but I do believe it was a good design, and looking to implement those trees that bring certain benefits, you can have a really good substitution of mineral feed, and you just increase the grazing space of this field by a lot. So we made it 3-dimensional, and not just two-dimensional. And as well, like the cows really suffer in the heat, because their ideal temperature is I think with 18 degrees or 18 to 23, and you get you get that on a spring day in the full sun already, and they start suffering and produce less meat, produce less milk, but also are not happy. So if you have a cooling environment like this plus some shade, you will have a more happy cow that gains some better weight. So I think this is definitely a very nice grazing system, because it covers so many different aspects.
This reminds me of something that two things. One is, there's this funny phenomenon that I see in New Zealand where farmers will put a single tree in a paddock, in a field, and observe and see, the cows eat the grass, because my understanding is that cows are not forest creatures, but they live on that edge between savanna and forest. So they go eat grass, and then they go rest in the forest. They digest in the shade where it's cooler, and they get to kind of browse selectively. And you're kind of recreating that habitat here, the mixed forest edge. But what you see when a farmer will just put a single tree or two trees in the paddock is they go eat the grass, and then all the cows will go to that one tree, lay there, kill the grass under the one tree, and the farmer sees and says, well, if I put trees in the paddock, they'll kill the grass. Not realizing that, well, if you put dappled shade everywhere, they're not just going to lounge and kill the grass under one tree. And so it's creating these really high tree density, but still that mixed pasture grassland with trees.
And for sure you will have always this phenomenon that basically on the edge of a field where there's huge trees, there will be worst grass growth below the tree. But this big tree is also shading out a lot of space under its crown. Those trees will just basically be kept as a hedge. We will head them many times.
Yeah, they'll stay managed. It's not an unmanaged forest edge.
Yes. So, and I think this will not interfere a lot with the grass production. Actually, I think the grass will benefit even from it.
Or cooler temperatures.
Yeah.
When it gets really hot, grass stops growing.
Until the canopies of the walnuts will shade the grass out completely.
We don't want that. No. In my opinion, we want a savanna system where maybe the emergent canopy layer shades out 20 to 40% at best, and then the shrubbery gets some, and there's still lots of forbs and grasses, because cows can't sustain themselves just off trees. Like they can, I think there's numbers out there that they can eat between 10 and 55 or something percent of this tree fodder, which is a lot, which is great if we could create that. But I think they do need grasses and forbs and all that. And the mixture is really what a savanna is, right? And that's what we're hoping to create here. Yeah. And I think when it comes to designing a system like this, the spacing here isn't optimal for us. Our machines, if we mow here, 3 meters wide, this is 4.5, so not really optimal. And if we would do it again, we'd probably choose 6 meter spacing, or even potentially make a bit wider rows, maybe 2 or 3 tree lines in one wider row, so they can actually go under the trees, I think, because if the sun is up, you don't get a lot of shade with the shrubbery, but underneath, if it's a bit wider row, it could work.
So you're saying a triple line?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the idea for the new system?
Yeah, exactly. Much wider lines, and then a bigger spacing in between. On the new system, it's going to be arable too, so we're thinking about 72 meters or something. So you get, a couple machine width in between. And here you don't really need that if you're grazing, but still 4.5 is just very narrow, and for management it makes your life not that easy. Yeah.
I think the idea was because we're in a drought environment, we want to keep it as dense as possible to get the most of the microclimate effect. But for sure, and we were not planning on having so many cows back then, and nowadays maybe the heifers will be able to graze through here one day. I think we were initially thinking or planning after 8 years to let the cows in here. Now after in the 5th year we let them in, just 2.5, but and it worked perfectly.
So you waited, you let this whole area wait for 5 years before bringing the cows in.
Exactly.
And that's where you're doing management, right? That's where I'm mowing and all those kind of things. So that's where the perfect spacing would make sense. Now, essentially, it doesn't matter if we were consistently grazing it and there was no machine operation in here. It would absolutely work. So, yeah.
And I think a very, very interesting fact about this system is as well that because you would think, wow, so much work, so much management for so many years and no harvest at all, except of for sure the sea buckthorn and the walnut in some years. But we got this system funded actually by the lower environmental
Protection agency?
Yeah. Because here in Germany you have to, or the government has to replant, I think 2 trees or 1 tree. For every tree they have to cut down for, I don't know, infrastructure building or whatever. And they're desperately looking for places like all the time because it's so difficult. And we were approaching them with this design and telling them like, look, we're not just planting here like a sea buckthorn walnut plantation. We plant like a lot of different trees. We plant even herbs underneath. So this will be a very diverse system for that benefit, where the ecosystem will benefit from. And it was very difficult to convince them. But in the end they were buying in that idea and realized, look, it's actually just every 6th line that is a production line, so we're not going to finance them a new plantation. And they basically paid for the whole implementation and management for I think 15 or 20 years. And I think it was the first time ever that they were paying for an agroforestry system in this way. I heard of other people in other parts of Germany trying the same, but they never succeeded because I think they were not as diverse. So in this case, the diversity was paying off a lot already. And in the next, I think this could be a good example for other farms to have a similar concept going on.
And do you have a ballpark estimate of what that amount was that they paid out?
I saw the contract. I don't remember.
No, I don't remember. More. I mean,
actually, I don't know.
The whole implementation. Like all the trees, all the work and management, and I guess our boss was putting taking a really good deal out of it. But I don't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah, like 1,500,000.
Not a million. No. I think
200,
maybe 200,000.
What they paid. I don't remember the 6 digits, but anyway.
I don't know.
Well,
yeah. I guess what I wanted to say is that this is quite high input the way we're doing it, because we've been mowing, we're using the grass as mulch as well here. But if you design it right and you can use it with your machinery, if you have livestock or whatever, you could potentially hay in here. If it's humid enough, you might not need the additional boost of the mulch. They grow as they do, and then they're a bit slower, and you don't necessarily need to prune them. So it could be, once it's in place, it could be super low input, these tree lines, but in the long term you have something that's just amazing for your cows while still being able to use the land. So I think that's pretty cool.
I think a very interesting concept that is similar to this is living fences. Like you can basically use willow cuttings to have a living fence and the cows can graze the fences. And then if you like make it into paddocks, you kind of have already like a little agroforestry system just with willow, but you could also probably use other trees in the same manner. And yeah, but I think the biggest learning here was the implementation issue we had, because was the second system we started a bit too late because life I guess, and it was already like too wet, and we had to do the soil preparation in wet soil conditions, not like crazy wet but too wet. And actually this field here has quite some loam compared to other fields on the farm, and we created a lot of compaction on the side of the tree lines, because there we were driving for the soil preparation for the wood chip application. On the 9 kilometers took us like a lot of time until we had it done, the work with the big machinery, and we still feel the pain literally, because there's a lot of thistles growing in the rows on the side of the rows. And I mean, I believe they are there for a purpose. They do fix the soil, break up the compaction, but they're pain to manage, and we want to get rid of them and make their job as well unnecessary. So we are now going to work here with minerals, like because we did a lot of soil samples, and we've found out there's like a lot of deficiencies, especially in calcium and manganese, and many more. But calcium and manganese are especially important for thistles. Like they really like situations where there's low calcium and low manganese. So if I already saw this with many other farmers I visited, they were able to fertilize their weeds away. So we will do the same here, because we cannot rip the soil again and like break the compaction. I think the thistles already did this quite well with the taproot, but they're still thriving in this condition of low manganese, low calcium. So this is what we're going to do soon, and hope the best.
Super cool. Love to see this system. I think this is again, you guys are just like, this farm is pioneering in a lot of different spaces. And so again, it's a great example for another iteration of what regen ag can look like, especially for New Zealand, where cows are a huge part of the landscape.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing. Where are we up to next? Keyline. Cool. We'll send the drone up.
This walnut is dead? No, that's your
There's walnuts in here in the sea buckhorn line. This was one of the most impressive systems. You can see large scale, 28 hectares. There's 9 kilometers of tree line that were planted in 2 days. That's the crazy part. All these lines were planted in 2 days because of the German ingenuity. I don't know if the clip has been played yet, but they've got this beautiful potato planting machine that they retrofitted to use to plant seeds. It's phenomenal. So this is the part of visiting this farm that was probably the most inspirational for me. This unlocked a whole new level of what I see as possible with agroforestry. Like I said, leave it to the Germans to figure out how to optimize and make efficient this relatively complex thing. So kudos to the team there who's doing this innovation, this research, the implementation, the management. Loved all the work that they're doing. And this system is just a highlight of what can be possible at a large scale. Now, again, it's early days. They're still just figuring out the technicalities of implementation. They're figuring out the management stuff on the smaller, earlier systems. But that's all feedback, and that's all data and process that's going to be applied here, where they have, I think it's like every 20-something meters, they've got these tree lines for animals, and the moment they can do hay or grains between. And they've got these nests where they're doing pair focus. So it's not syntropic that meets all the tick boxes, but it doesn't matter. That's part of this, is like releasing yourself from like, it has to be, every single box has to be ticked. No, it's about your context. It's about what's relevant and makes sense for you in your situation. For these guys, this particular system, I loved it. They've got these multiple pair seedlings coming up here that they can field graft later. They've got the harvesting that's happening for the hay. You can do grain. You can put animals through here once the trees are established. It's a beautiful vision. And so this was by far the most impactful system that I saw, not just at this farm, but probably across all the farms that I visited in Europe. This one speaks out a lot as something that broke my beliefs about how much you can scale agroforestry. You can see from the drone footage, this is hands down the largest syntropic agroforestry system I've ever seen in my life. The rows, I think, are like 24 meters apart, something like this. You see the machinery with the drone, you see it now. It's impressive. It's really big. It was planted this year. I don't know the details of it, but we're gonna find out because it's super interesting. You can see the mounds of mulch on each side. I think this was where they had the seeding equipment, the modified potato planter used to seed these lines. So it only took 2 days instead of what would have taken weeks. So we're gonna dive in, see what the system's all about. We got the two here. What's the deal with the system? What's happening here?
Well, how do we move kind of towards a landscape scale? You know, we have a 1,000-hectare farm of arable farming. We have big plots like this, big fields. This is actually a smaller one. It goes up to 80 hectares. This is about 26 that is fenced. And it's tricky to scale super diversified syntropic systems. So what we try to do here is employ some of these principles and design rows that kind of work within like a mechanized system. So we try to separate certain functions. Here you can see like 2 rows, which will be tree fodder rows for the most part. And we really focus on direct seeding. So we developed a small little implement that we showed you before, which can be tractor pulled, and we put a mixture of seeds and substrate in there, and we just go over these rows and seed them. So the idea is to have like almost exclusively direct seeded rows, 3 rows.
Like we saw at the earlier system, which didn't have exclusively direct seeded.
Yeah.
But moving towards that is the idea here. So you're not even planting cuttings, you're not planting seedlings, it's direct seed everything.
Yeah, there's some poplar cuttings in certain rows, and we will see how much benefit they will provide for more like for other trees, like germinate and get some shade for them. Yeah, but the idea was really how can we like dumb it down, simplify it as much as possible, essentially mechanize it, you know, just having a couple tractor passes to bring the seed into the soil and then to mulch, right? Prepare the soil, bring the seeds in, mulch, and that's it. And let's see if that works, right? So far we haven't seen that many tree seedlings yet, but they might, you know, take a little while to actually show up, some maybe even a couple years. But hopefully in the end this will be a very diverse hedgerow with very, very little input.
Man, leave it to the Germans to like mechanize efficiency, super simple, but also just as much diverse as you want.
Mm-hmm.
This is beautiful. This is like, it's hard for my brain to wrap my head around it because we're not seeing like 4-meter trees at this stage like we were earlier, but they will come, and that's, you guys are doing great work. Yeah, really like respect the work you guys are doing.
Yeah. And
super cool.
Here we employed this other idea that we showed before with the direct seeding. So we collected pear seeds, which are not from pulp, but we collected them from like local native pears, wild pears, and we seeded them in these spots. You want to check them out?
The nests in between.
Yeah, these seed nests. So actually the next one looks like
What do you think about this side, Laura?
Well, actually I was not here when they planted. I was in Australia and New Zealand visiting you.
Visiting me, which was amazing. You should go watch the video. All right, pear seeds.
Yeah, so these germinated just a couple months ago, and they got a little protection here, you know, a little vole protection, because we do have issues with them eating up the roots and they're not establishing properly. So we really concentrated all the resources here to get like really strong pears that we can probably graft at this rate in year 2, and then we have some freestanding like big vigorous pear trees here, hopefully. So, you know, it's not syntropic at all, but it's hopefully a very effective way of still getting very, very drought tolerant and vigorous trees.
I want to make sure I understand that correctly. These lines that we're seeing, the long lines, primarily fodder.
Yeah.
Pairs on these in-between lines
Yeah.
in the nests. Animals moving through here.
Exactly. So the animals in the first year, probably the fence will go right along here, so they can use this fodder strip, you know, eat, trample, scratch themselves, whatever. It's there for the animals, and then hopefully also like has a certain microclimatic effect for the crops, because like it's an agro-silvopastoral system where you have the grazing element, you have the trees, but we will also have arable agriculture. So in between here, where it's mowed, there will be grain crops for maybe 3, 4, even 5 years, and then there's going to be some kind of fodder crop, like a grass clover mix, where the cows can graze afterwards. Then the cows are going to be here for a couple of years, and then there's going to be grain crops again. And in the meantime, all the trees are going to be growing, and hopefully help with those other 2 operations as well. Well, this actually here is one of the not so nice examples. So
Let's go find a nice example.
there's nicer ones.
I sat us down at a really bad example. Let's go find there's some trees.
Well, actually, this was planted. So this is in the 2nd year, and here we did a bunch more planting. So most of these guys are planted. There's some seedlings in here, but I think we should maybe walk over there, which is a couple 100 meters, but they're a nicer example of what we've done this winter, I think.
Okay. Can you just list some species that you're like line by just piece by piece what we're seeing here?
Yeah.
Because we got comfrey on this edge, which is super interesting. I wouldn't have expected that.
Oh yeah, this is a great example actually. So here we try to establish the herbaceous layer outside of the main tree line, and it's mainly comfrey, but we had a diverse mix. And we had the mulch lying here, and then we had this little seed cannon we just went through. It was very tedious, but right now we love it, so we can just go through, do the chop and drop.
Was that the orange seed thing that we saw earlier? Okay.
And there's probably a way to like mechanize it or do this in a more simplified way, or like not as time-consuming way. But yeah, it worked out really well, so we're quite pleased with that, and we might emulate that later on. There's, as you see, there's less to no herbaceous plants right with like under the trees, which makes management much faster, much easier. You don't have to come in and selectively try and prune something out. And the species in this row here, which was planted in the winter of 2024 or 2023, 2024, it's alternating like pioneer tree and then different fodder shrubs. So here we have something like wild rose. This is hybrid poplar. We've got a maple, field maple. We've got this native poplar, the shaking poplar. Here we got mulberry, which does not like all the frosts we get here, but I mean it has survived so far. Hybrid poplar again. This is Paragana, which is Siberian pea shrub. We've got birch, which is native. Poplar again. Elderberry, one of your favorites. Elm, which has pretty bad disease issues, but here at our side it's actually been quite healthy so far. This the cows love. Actually, this is willow, goat willow, I guess, Salix caprea. Again, what do you see? Tree hazel, which is very nice. And maybe we find a couple things growing from seed. Oh, here we go. This is an apple again, growing from pulp. We put some pulp in here too, because why not? Might as well. We've got lots of chestnuts, oak, all growing from seed. They look very small now, but look at it, second year. This is gonna be massive trees, massive chestnut trees within no time. So, yeah, loving it. This looks really good.
Super cool, really inspirational. Way to make it seem like more accessible to large scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, respect. These guys.
And here, what they did already was just going with this cutting machine that Julie showed you on the side here, walking, and the machine was like this, cutting the comfrey, dropping it straight away, and boom.
Again, there's some trade-offs. The drop isn't perfect, it lies on top like this. So this is going to happen, but yeah, it's when you scale things, then you have to make certain compromises. Yeah.
Love it. Is there a day where this no, it doesn't make sense for fruit production. It's just too big. It's not the focus.
Well, the idea was that we don't try to fulfill every function a system can potentially have within one row. So these are exclusively for ecosystem services and fodder production. And then we have these dedicated rows or individual spots for fruit trees, just to make it more manageable and also to make it like mechanizable when it comes to harvest.
Which is where we can see the grass is still up and hasn't been mowed.
Yeah, only because they're going to use this for hay. I use the other grass for mulch, and I'm going to come through there with my tractor and mow it in the coming days. Yeah.
Very cool.
Move over there, yeah, here we made some extra rows, like proper rows, and put in a seed mix for the herbaceous layer, and it was comfrey cuttings and different native local herbaceous plants like wild carrot or what else do we have? Like we used to use parsnip, but it's phototoxic, so it's not very nice to work with because it burns people. And sorrel. Yeah, there's sorrel in there, and there's lots of other things where maybe not the last name, but definitely not the English name.
So delicious.
Yeah, it's nice and sour.
You gonna eat that whole leaf?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
We can already snack from the system.
Let's go.
First year.
Actually, it's a cross of Castanea sativa and crenata, so the Japanese and the European chestnut, with the idea that they're hopefully a bit more resistant to chestnut blight, which is a disease which is increasingly, especially in Southern Europe, a big issue. Yeah, and it's the parent material. They are two improved varieties. So we hope that these kind of improved seedlings have a higher chance of producing very nice fruit that we could actually, or nuts that we can actually sell. So we plant them at a spacing of 6 meters, and probably in the long term we will retain every second of them, and hopefully we have enough good producing trees. Potentially you have to go for a much higher density and then select which ones are bearing like early and the right quality. Yeah. Hey, but these look better than I thought. They're the best ones because we planted them without mulch, and then we mulch after planting in the spring, just driving over them, almost knocking them over, and this is the best row. Like, look at the fucking willows. It's much better than the poplars that are growing with mulch when they're like weird. Yeah, I think it's because maybe you're pushing.
This is one that cuts at the same time as it swaths the grass, moves the grass over onto the side of the tree lines.
Yeah, it's really nice. Really clean cut.
For the last system that we planted, we try to improve the direct seeding method. So we built this potato planter, we modified it a little bit, and we're doing this because we had a layer of mulch already on the field, so wood chips and a lot of grass cuttings from the year. So we built this guy here to split the mulch. And the potato planter would drop the seeds like here in between those metal things. Those are just to protect the seeds not to get covered by the wood chips. And so we made a big seed mix, like seeds that we were collecting here all around the area, so all local genetics. And we put it in here, and we created those small shovels that would carry the seeds from the big pot into the ground. Right. So
Super cool. Yeah, really easy. You said you planted 9 kilometers with this in the first year?
It's super fast. Like usually we did by hand and brought out the big mix, but with this we did like in 2 days. We were going with the tractor and GPS, and it was all done. Yeah, it was helpful.
Yeah. 2 days, 9 kilometers. Way better than buckets of seeds by hand. This is sick for big scale. All right, I think I skipped a number or something because the numbers got funny, but this is the last system. What I have is number 10, And this is their keyline system, where they're doing diverse fruit and berry production, as well as a lot of scientific research. And so this is one of the best maintained systems here on the farm. It's really clean, it's well organized in the strata, it's all just really nicely balanced and well managed. I think they said they do about 3 to 5 different management rounds per year, per season here, which is a lot. They've got a huge diversity of these really interesting fruits and berries, and it's just a really great example of how important the herbaceous layer is. All these systems, the herbaceous layer, the aromatics, the berries, these understory plants that reduce the weeding that you have to do. It maintains the soil moisture, can provide extra harvests, more products. It's a super important part. And one of the most interesting things here is just all the research that they're doing. They had, I think it's somewhere around here, they had one of these weather stations and they're collecting all this research. They're getting universities to come out and organizations that do analysis, not just the biology, but also the economics of these systems and making projections and seeing how they compare to traditional agriculture in the area. And when they're taking these samples of the organic material in the soil, moisture, biological activity, these agroforestry systems are just off the charts compared to all the other farming practices around. It's so crazy that the science or the researchers weren't believing it. Like they thought that the science was broken, measurements were not right, or the samples weren't good because it was just orders of magnitude out of what is normal. Now, one of the challenges here is finding the efficiency with farming and research, because for research, you would have all these different experiments, you'd be doing all these different tests and controls and this and that, but at the same time, finding the balance of, well, this is an actual farm and we're trying to make this profitable and we're trying to figure out the management so it's not a huge pain in the ass. It's finding that balance between what can you constrain, what can you sacrifice for the sake of research versus like how good can the research get. And a lot of the research already exists for this stuff, but some places like Germany, where there's probably less research about agroforestry, it's important to collect local research. And so that's what they're doing here. I love the work that's happening. It's phenomenal. And again, just super proud of all the folks managing, implementing, strategizing about how they're running things at this farm. Here at Guten Bozel, and this has been described as the system with A, the most meat, but B, the most creatively named, keyline. You can see why, drone footage. This system has been described as probably one of the most well-maintained systems here. It's beautiful, it's got a really high density and diversity of well-managed trees, fruit trees, and berries. Yeah?
That's right.
Cool.
It's
is that it? That's the end of the video. No more to talk about.
Nailed it. So the system is super diverse. Lots of different mother trees, lots of different shrubbery as well, which was intended. Some of them for berries that you could potentially pick for human consumption, and some of them which would be interesting for chickens. Some kind of grazing chicken operation in here as some additional feed. And then the productive fruit trees are apple, pear, plum. That's kind of the how the rows are designed. And then there's some sea buckthorn in here as well as a potential early successional crop, right? And what you see here in the background is a weather station, kind of highlighting the activities we're doing here. We are like a living lab, or trying to do like research under like realistic farming conditions within the framework of an actual operating, like operational economic, like an actual operational farm. And we have these low budget weather stations that were set up by one of our scientists, and they are on a lot of different systems, kind of trying to measure over the years, like how do the conditions here in the agroforestry systems change compared to the other weather stations which are out in the open, out in the crop fields, and so on. And we have so many more activities. Like we collaborate with a lot of different institutions and universities. They come here, they do some very interesting research on like soil microbial, or just the microbial diversity, but also like macrofauna, like earthworms and all that kind of stuff. And we've had some really interesting first initial results, like comparing the very simplified Poplar system to a system like this. There was orders of magnitudes difference in like microbial abundance and also diversity, which was, we're very stoked about that. And then we do a lot of soil sampling, because we want to see how does the soil change, like the characteristics, how much organic matter we can build within those systems, but also within our agricultural fields where we're doing like these regenerative practices, right? And that's some of the activities we're doing when it comes to science.
Yeah, and it's funny because, for example, there's the first study out about the syntropic system compared to the alley cropping was pure poplar, and there the carbon buildup in the syntropic system was so fast that the scientists couldn't believe it. They said like literally like no, I don't know if this is even possible. Scientists, from our scientific background, we are doubting that this is even possible, this fast build up. That it has to be just from the mulch, or just because it was not just in the topsoil, it was a very fast carbon buildup in the subsoil, where there's like only the root exudates basically reaching, but they were like, no, they leached something from the mulch, and in the end, in their study, it claims everything that's beneficial basically comes from the mulch. But I'm so frustrated with this, because I feel like many of those scientists, they're very stuck in their concepts, and don't really value the scientific work, for example, from Dr. Christine Jones, about the liquid carbon pathway and the importance of root exudates and the like potential of root exudation. That basically from a diverse planting you get more carbon into the soil from the root exudates than from the biomass that, for example, a cover crop is producing. But anyways, I think they will grow as well with their tasks here, and we're very happy to have them as a partner, because it's the biggest plant institute in Germany. And yeah, they do a lot of research with us. We also have a very nice institute for water management or water science here. They also check inside of the agroforestry systems how the soil moisture is is developing over the year at different depth, and yeah, compared to open field, and also inside of the tree line, and between the tree lines. So it's very, very nice. And we could already do you remember the woman that was here, the professor that explained? She could already tell that there was some difference even after 5 years, right?
I don't remember the details. We just had an intense discussion on the biological pump and if it works or not.
The biotic pump.
The biotic pump, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which we're pretty far from any major body of water, and there's lots of arable fields in between here and the ocean. That's, I think, is a challenge that we can't overcome by ourselves. Other people have to plant more forest. But she, I guess, challenged that that notion that works or exists at all. For her, it was, well, for most people here, it's all about how do we conserve water within the fields. Whereas, you know, the next step would be how can we increase the general abundance, the amount of water that we can get, right? And I think right now we have to think in conservation as well, because there is so little and there's only so much you can do as an individual farmer. But yeah, no, it's very interesting what they're doing. I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, but we're like, this weather station is checking the wind speed as well as the rain. So it's actually not this is checking the rain. Another one is checking the rain, but this is especially checking the wind speed. We have other stations and other systems with wider spacing as well, to see like what is the benefit in terms of like preventing wind erosion by planting the tree lines, or by having the tree lines in the field. And yeah, we have this on many systems. And the first results were also very promising, because he was like the scientist from the big institute was like, yeah, basically after like 15 meters in a 15 meters out of the tree row, you still have a beneficial effect, but after that it kind of
Tapers off.
yeah, goes down. But in this case the trees were maybe also just like 5 meters high, the poplars, and I think the higher the trees are, the more beneficial effect you have. But I was thinking the most interesting part was about the microbiology as well. That in the poplar system, the microbiology inside the tree line was almost completely identical than in the center of the interspace, and the syntropic line was completely different. There was like way more fungi also in the subsoil, also in the topsoil, but also less pathogens and greater diversity. So really, for me, it was a very nice proof that yeah, it's working. They still blamed it only on the mulch, so yeah, they will learn, I guess, with more research they will do here. But I mean, it's also a trade-off we have to do, or we sometimes don't want to do, because like we want to have scientific work being done here inside of a running farm. We don't want to plant a system that gives us like a lot of work, because we do this portion without mulch, this portion with just those mother trees. Like we try to make it handable, manageable for ourselves, but at the same time get a valuable outcome for the scientists as well. And that's not always easy. Because like, especially in the cropping, for example, when I am doing like trials with different compost extracts, I have to repeat it like 9 fucking times in over the whole field. And if I don't like really like ask the friendliest tractor driver in our team, then nobody really wants to do it, or it used to be like that. Now it's also different, but yeah, it's because it's an extra burden, and yeah, but we kind of committed to that burden because we want to prove or want to show that there is actually science behind our concepts. And I think all the time, like there is already a lot of research about syntropic systems or agroforestry in general, regenerative agriculture, something from the 30s, from the 60s, from the 70s, like very, very old research sometimes, but also very new research from other countries. But somehow in Germany, some of those like institutes, they don't really look around, in my opinion, and see, oh, this is actually already out in science since almost 100 years. But yeah, and kind of we feel the urge, we have to prove it again in Germany, in our context, with German measurements, and not yeah, because some people don't trust in something that was done 100 years ago in the US, for example. But yeah, I think we're on the right path. We're working with a lot of great partners together, and we were already able to prove or to show a lot of things scientifically, and we're just at the beginning, basically. So yeah, there will come more.
Well, you guys are doing great work to like measure these systems, create a diversity of systems, but also keeping it in a framework of what's actually workable here on a farm, not just like a research play project. Yeah. Love it.
It has to be both, because otherwise it will not be adapted by other people. Like, yeah,
exactly. Like with these systems, I think we're first showing what kind of ecological benefits do we have, what can we measure here, what does it deliver on, and then also try, at the same time we're recording all the activities here and seeing like, okay, how much does it actually cost to do this, what trade-offs are there, how manageable is the harvest later on. So all those kind of things, like you have to think in the different dimensions of regeneration or sustainability.
So speaking of farm activities, time on the ground, what's the management of this plot look like?
Right now, I'm probably gonna mow again in a couple of days. You see, it's not a lot of growth, unfortunately, because it has been very dry. Everything's just producing seeds. But yeah, I mow here around 4 times a year, mowing, swathing all the grass onto the tree rows. Sometimes I come through and mulch one last time, mulch down if there's if there's too much growth in the fall. In the tree lines, we are managing the herbaceous layer also around 3 to 5 times, depending on the year and the humidity and all that. Doing like selective pruning, and yeah, usually we just go through it and cut everything. There's very high diversity of forbs in here, so sometimes it's not the optimal point in time, but it's just not possible with the amount of systems we have. Yeah, in around this time of year we go through and we prune the mother trees. So first, we move the canopy up, and then we're gonna top them at 4 to 5 meters, probably starting next year.
4 to 5, not 45.
4 to 5. 45 is, we don't really reach that heights here. As you can see, the forest over there maybe 30 at best.
Yeah.
And
what does the weeding look like? Because obviously that's a big part of this, and getting the herbaceous layer done at a good density. What amount of time is involved with weeding?
Here, because it's our nicest syntropic looking one, we're really trying to be good at it, and we are mainly using hand tools, using machetes, sickles, pruners, whatever. And it does take some time. We have a lot of, we were seeding, or a lot of seeds were being brought in for late successional species. There's oak, there is chestnut, there's aronia in here, there's ash in here, lots of different trees from seed, and the planting density is extremely high. So often there's these pioneer trees, mother trees, and then we have a fruit crop planted right at the base. This is a cornel cherry, and because it's so dense, it's very hard to use any kind of machinery. So a lot of it is handwork here, which takes quite some time. We're starting to collect data on how long we actually need per meter per person. And in other systems where it's a bit simpler, we started using a hedge cutter kind of situation, which, you can do it standing upright, and you can mow down everything a lot faster. Sometimes you use a seedling, but that's just a trade-off. That's why we are seeding so many. So I think that works quite well, and is a step forward to managing these kind of systems on a larger scale.
Here we also planted the herbaceous layer by propagated plant and not by seed. We have a very dense canopy or density of herbs, so there were not a lot of grasses to weed out, right? I mean, because in the past sometimes we had there were parts where the seeded herbs were not germinated, and then grasses came in. And we had to do a lot of weeding, and then with what was this dense planting of the herbs, we kind of achieved the English today is not the best.
The end of a long day.
Yeah, we were able to get the grasses out of the tree line, but also a very important point is to cut the grasses at the right time, because there were also situations where we were cutting a bit too late and swathing a lot of grass seeds into the tree line, and that was a pain. That was creating more work for us.
Almost too late now. I'm going on Sunday.
Yeah. So I think, look, there's still flowering.
Yeah.
So I think it's for those ones it's just all right. But yeah, at some point you have to trade off, not giving as much mulch, but rather mulching and keeping the grasses here on the interrows, on the spacing in between, and to prevent creating extra work.
Cool.
Yeah, because of all the planted herbaceous plants, I like to think, or the general diversity of this one with the planted herbaceous plants and with the potential berry crops, the nut crop, the fruit crops, I think this is a great example of a system for like a small diversified farmer or grower that really wants to get an early production, because you know these herbaceous plants you could, yeah, we have sage in here, we have lovage in here, and different aromatics, and you could really grow a ton of cool things, and we're already getting a pretty good berry crop. So for us it's a bit hard to market this kind of system because the amounts are so small for what we're usually marketing here at scale. But I like the system a lot because when we get all kinds of growers visiting us, and hopefully, in like my dream scenario is that we have a great solution, agroforestry solution for every farmer that comes here, so some inspiration for everyone.
That's beautiful. I think you guys are doing a really great job at all of that. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I know you have. We'll see what else we get up to, but it's been a fantastic time seeing all these different agroforestry systems. Hopefully you enjoyed that breakdown of Guten Bozel, the phenomenal systems they have there, the nursery, the animal integration, just all the level of detail with the management, creating resilient systems, growing trees from seed, field grafting, all of it. Hopefully it blew you away as much as it did for me being there. That's why I do this. I do this to share because I'm just so enthusiastic about it. So if you've made it this far to the end of the video, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Leave a comment below letting me know that you made it all the way to the end. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.